Hello, I hope this video finds you well. Tonight's night 13 in my nightly commitment to record one Codingbat video a night while schools are closed. So whether you're a student of mine or someone out there learning to code, please don't hesitate to send me any questions. We're looking at string times, which is contained in warm-up 2, and in this video we're looking at the Python solution. Let's start by reading the problem. Given a string and a non-negative integer n, return a larger string that is n copies of the original string. So what does that mean? So string time accepts two parameters, high and 2, we get high, high. So notice we've taken that string high and we've duplicated it twice. If we get high and 3, we get high, 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 and high and 1, we get high. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking whatever string is passed and we're using string construction or concatenation to actually build the string and repeat it that n times. Now, the first approach we're going to use is a really nice simple approach and actually takes advantage of a nice Python feature, which is multiplication of strings. You can't really do this in many other languages. And so what you're able to do is if you take a string and multiply it by a numerical value, it will actually copy it that many times. So for example, if I have some string called str here, called hello, and I multiply it by 3, what I end up with is hello 3 times. And this actually makes this problem really simple because all I have to do is take str, which is the string that's passed in, multiply it by n. And it works. Now, there's two other ways I want to look at this. And I want to look at using two different types of loops. I want to look at this question using what's called a for loop or a counted loop. And I want to look at this using a while loop, which is considered a conditional loop. Without getting into this in this video, for loops and while loops are completely interchangeable, but with a little bit of thought, the code can become quite a bit easier if you put a little thought in advance about which loop to use. But again, I'm not going to get into that in this video. I'm just going to show you how to do it with both of these loops. So here's approach 2, and again, essential ideas in this approach are string construction and for loops, or counted loops. So the structure of a for loop, or let's start with what does a loop do? A loop allows you to repeat a section of code a set number of times. And what you have with a loop is you have some sort of line of code that tells you, gives you information about how many times or how to decide whether or not to run the loop. And then you have what's called a loop code block. So in Python, the for loop looks like this: for I in range. And the first value always gives you your start value. The second value is your check value, because each time you execute the loop, you're going to do a check and decide whether to repeat the loop, and then third value is your change. And there's a colon at the end. Now I want to point out here, there are all sorts of shortcuts with loops in Python, and it makes it a lot shorter and simpler. I tend to start teaching this full form of a loop in Python because I find it translates a lot better into Java or some other languages. So let's start by just looking at an example that has nothing to do with this problem. If we set this for I in range loop, and we see that the start is 0, the check is 3, and the change is 1. And this is our loop code block. So we can do whatever we want in here. Anything tabbed in is that loop code block. So when we first reach a loop, I gets set to 0, and then we do a check, and I say, is 0 less than 3? And that's true, so we run the loop. When we get to the end of the loop, we increment I by 1. That's our change. So then we say, is 1 less than 3? Since that's true, we go back up to the top and we run the loop again. I becomes 2. Okay, well, 2 less than 3, true, so we go back up to the top and run the loop again. And then I becomes 3, and it's 3 less than 3, that fails, and we exit the loop, and we continue with the code. And this is an idea of how you trace a loop. Now let's take this and apply it to this actual situation. If str is high and n is 2, well, what I need to do is I need to set I to 0, and then say is 0 less than 2, and if that's true, we're going to run the loop. And inside the loop, we're going to say some temporary string is going to be whatever's currently there plus the string itself. So if that temporary string happens to be empty initially, we add high to it, and we get high once. When I get to the end of the loop, I gets incremented by 1, and I say, okay, is 1 less than 2? And that's true, so we run the loop again. And we run that same line. Temp string is equal to temp string plus str. So previously, we had high in our temp string, and so we add another high to it, we get high twice. I equals 2, is 2 less than 2 false, and then we exit the loop. can't stress this enough. It's really important that you know how to trace a basic loop. Loops in Python are kind of, well, for loops in particular in Python are a little bit weird because I think in the process of trying to make it easier for people, it makes it harder to do some things. So you can play around with these, and I have a couple of videos that you can take a loop at. But in this case, let's just actually write this as code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this temporary string and just set it equal to an empty string. And now I'm going to write that loop. So I want this loop to run n times. So I'm going to say for I in range, and I'm going to start off setting my start to 0. And I want to loop as long as I is less than n. And I is going to increment by 1 each time. And then I do tstr is equal to, well, whatever is currently in the tstr, which I think of as temp string, plus str. And when I'm done that loop, I'm going to return tstr. So if I just come up here and comment that out, just to, there we go, that's commented out. And now if I run this, the problem works. And this is a nice example of how to use this for I in range loop. Now, if there's all sorts of interesting things, like I said, if you swap, if you start off where your start value is less than your check value, it will actually change the inequality and it will count down. Lots of different things you can do. And again, there's a lot of different shortcuts with these. So I really do encourage you to take some time and play around with these to understand them. All right. Now let's look at a while loop, which is essentially the same idea as a for loop, but as opposed to putting everything in one nice line, it actually goes and it breaks everything out. While loops, you can think of them just like if statements, but as opposed to an if statement that evaluates once and decides to either run the code block or skip it, a while loop will check the if statement, check the condition, and only enter if it's true, but when it gets to the bottom, it will repeat. So what I do here is I set I equal to 0, and I make tstr equal to empty string. Now notice, in this case, this I was contained as part of the loop structure, but now I'm just setting it as a variable. And I can say, well, I want to go while I is less than n. And so this is my start, this is my check, and what's my change? Well, every time I run through the loop, I want to go I is equal to I plus 1. And what do I want to do in the loop? I want to take tstr is equal to tstr plus str. And then outside of it, I return tstr. And I go, and that works fine. Because we're doing the exact same thing as the for I in range, but we have a little bit of more flexibility. And I actually in Python like the while loops a little bit more, especially for beginning programmers, because you can actually play with this inequality and have a little more fun with it. I can't stress enough how important understanding basic loop structures is. So I really do encourage you, if you're a beginning programmer, to go out and try and practice these. A good way to practice loops is just to try and print out numbers. So you could write a simple program that's going to print out all the numbers from 0 to 100, 1 to 50. And by doing this, you get an understanding of how to structure that loop. They're essential when working with strings and list data structures. I hope this video helped. Have a great day.